good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Welcome to our innovation webinar for University of Roehampton, London Online. And today we're going to talk about generating sustainable value through creativity. So, it's time to get our creative juices flowing. And we have a fantastic guest today, a leader in innovation. And we have Dr. Noordin Shehabuddeen. Hello, Doctor. How are you today?
I'm really well, and it's just gone past 11 p.m. in Australia, and I'm still awake and looking forward to this webinar.
You're still feeling creative. That's fantastic. So before I let you carry on with your talk, Noordin, we just have a few tips and tricks for our participants today. We have an interactive session, and Noordin's here to take some of your questions. So you'll see there's a little Q&A box to the left of the image with a blue bar. It says ask a question. So please go in there and ask your questions. We're also asking you to give us your job titles and the proudest achievement of your professional career, because it's interesting to get to know each other and to find out the kind of students that you'll be studying with on the program, whether you work in the creative positions or otherwise. So thank you very much for that, and we'll return to that later on in the presentation. We're going to have a poll as well, and that's going to center and focus on finding out whether you are creative. And our question is, looking at age, are younger people more creative than older people? We're going to ask that one later. Let's have a look. Our poll question for today is, let's have a look. Let's bear with me. Innovation survey. Which of the following statements is true about creativity? Which of the following statements is true about creativity? And it's a multiple choice, so please go in there and fill out these polls. Thank you very much. Everyone can improve their creative output. That's option 1. Only the right brain contributes to creativity. That's option 2. Option 3, creative people are artistic. And option 4, intelligent people are always creative. So there's 4 options. Which of the following statements is true about creativity? Please go in there and have a look at the poll and answer your questions. And Noordin will come back to you later. So thank you very much, Noordin, for today. And I'll pass it over to you to have a big discussion on unleashing creativity. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all those who've joined us from various parts of the world. I'm delighted to be here with you to really go through this really fascinating topic around creativity and innovation. It's something that I feel very passionate about. While you finish your poll questions, I will just give you a bit of an introduction around what we'll cover. We will come back to look at the poll questions around halfway through this presentation. Essentially, what I'd like to do is start off by discussing some of the fundamental tectonic changes that are happening around us in terms of the way in which we create value and the way in which we extract value. Then I'd like to really focus on creativity. What is creativity? How do we as individuals become more creative? Then I'd like to look at, once we have come up with creative ideas, then how do customers put a value on which one is more valuable than the other? And then I'll leave you with some concluding thoughts. There will be a lot of opportunity for question and answer during the presentation as well as after the presentation. So first of all, I'll just first define what innovation is, because the term innovation is being used so variably and so vaguely in all sorts of quarters. So I'll give you my own interpretation of what innovation is. To me, innovation is about adding value in a transformational way. This is an example that I came across myself. It's a real example I came across while I was traveling through Heathrow Airport. And I came across a gift shop that was selling a 1-penny coin for £10. It really was a transformational value addition indeed. And what they did was they had a little cheap wooden frame, and they put that 1-penny coin and with a little note at the bottom of the wooden frame that said, "A gift from the United Kingdom." and you had a whole bunch of tourists queuing to buy that little penny coin in a wooden frame for £10. To me, that was transformational value addition. Some might call it fraud, but it's up to you to interpret what that really means. So let me just move on to how fundamentally the way in which we create value and the way in which we extract value is changing. So the first picture there is a little bear, a picture of a little bear. And this bear comes from the Build-A-Bear workshop. Some of you might be familiar with this company. Others who are not familiar with it, it's actually a high street retail store. And it actually involves a child with a parent going into the shop and creating the bear from scratch. So in the past, we used to talk about user-involved design. Now there are companies that actively make use of customers to create the products. So in this example, the child goes in and actually chooses a bear template, helps to puff up the bear with all this sort of foam that goes into it, accessorize the bear, put little hearts in it, and put all other accessories around it, and for the pleasure of it, parents are charged a lot of money for it. I mean, how cheeky is that? They make your child do the work, and they charge you a lot of money for it. But when you really think about it, what are they really selling? Of course, they're selling a bear, yes, but also they're selling an experience. So this is what we call experiential innovation, where the child goes in and has the experience of creating a bear that the child actually wants. So let us look at a number of other examples. The shoe you see there in front of you is a Nike Plus shoe. This shoe comes with a little sports kit called the GPS Nike GPS Sports Kit, and it is a little GPS transponder, and you can insert that little GPS transponder into the sole of your shoe. So when you go for your daily walk or your daily run, it captures your performance data. When you get home, you can upload that data into a Nike-provided software. That software comes with a software-enabled personal trainer, so you can set targets, you can actually monitor how much energy you've burned that day, how far you've walked, even what particular route you took that day. But what's really clever about this particular product is that you can use the real performance data of the walk or the run that you've done that day to compete with other Nike Plus users in a virtual environment. And what's really, really clever about it is that you can then engage in social networking with other Nike Plus users. It has vast implications. But what is interesting is that when you think in this context, Nike isn't just selling a shoe. It is actually selling an experience, it's selling entertainment, it's selling a social network community. So sometimes we see examples in terms of value creation, value extraction, where the boundaries between products and services and entertainment and social network become very blurred. Now, the car you see on the bottom right-hand side is no doubt the London Black Cab. Now, there is an argument that knowledge, at least some forms of knowledge that can be made easily explicit, is becoming less and less valuable to the point that it's becoming virtually worthless. To drive a London Black Cab, ironically, you need a little permit called the Knowledge. It takes about 34 months of training and about 12 attempts to get that knowledge. But now, with the availability of sat-navs, that knowledge is about to become virtually worthless. So this is the kind of environment that we live in, where products are no longer just products. They are services, they're entertainment. Knowledge isn't just what it used to be. And so because of these fundamental shifts, only in the last 10 or so years, we need to start thinking about how this is impacting on the way we do business and how we can fundamentally improve on the way we do business, really through creativity and innovation. Let me continue on and discuss with you some of the other changes that we see around us. We see multiple competencies coming together. So what I mean by this is that it is no longer enough for a company or an organization to continue to be good at what it has already been good at. It has to also acquire other competencies. So the hairdryer you see in front of you is a Remington hairdryer. And what is interesting about this particular hairdryer is that it comes with a vitamin E attachment cartridge. So when you blow dry your hair, the vitamin E gets deposited onto your hair to give you that soft, supple-looking hair. Now, in terms of the implications of this, is that the Remington is now moving away from a one-off product seller to a consumables model. So when you buy a Remington vitamin E attachment hairdryer, you are then going to have to keep buying those cartridges. So it's a little bit like buying an inkjet printer and you're going to have to replace the ink inside it. The other thing that's interesting about it is that Remington, which has always been good at consumer electronics and electricals, is now actually going into places like pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and dermatology. And so it's an example where it's no longer enough for a company to just focus on one area of competencies, but they need to be much more complex and sophisticated in the way they do business. Here's another example around multiple competencies. This is actually a contact lens that is being trialed by Google. In fact, it's actually being used by some customers now. And it is a Google contact lens. But what is really interesting about this contact lens and the way in which it has been developed is that it involves two very interesting companies. It involves Google, a search engine company, and it involves Novartis, which is, of course, known for vaccines and pharmaceuticals. What this contact lens does is that the little circuitry and the sensors that it is in those contact lens actually monitors the blood glucose level in your tears and then transmit that information in real time to your smart device. Therefore, for those who are suffering from diabetes, it actually avoids the need for invasive methods of testing your blood glucose level. That is a huge advance. But what I wanted to emphasize here was the fact that there are two companies which you would never imagine coming together. A pharmaceutical vaccine company and a search engine company coming together to create this amazing product. And here is another example. Here, this is an example of a company called Asmopolis, which basically has come up with a little GPS device that attaches onto your Ventolin inhaler so that every time you take some puff, it sends out a signal which is stored in a database, which is then populated into on your smart device and on a map. And so you can judge by the density of asthma puffs taken around which area has the highest concentration of pollution. And here you see, for something like this to work, you need multiple domains coming together, domains of society, domains of health, domains of IT, and various other domains coming together. So again, a fundamental shift in the way we do things. And here's one other example. This is an example. Some of you who live in North America will perhaps be familiar with it. The little device you see there is something called Square, and it started out as a startup and is valued now at over $5 billion. It's a little square plastic device, and the earphone jack you see there plugs into the smartphone, and the little slot you see on the device is actually a credit card swiping device, so that you can take and make credit card payment on your mobile phone. And what it does is it actually opens up opportunities for mobile salespeople. It allows impulse buying and all sorts of opportunities. So again, the way in which we transact is fundamentally changing. So clearly the solution around this, all of these are fundamentally based on creativity, the way in which we come up with new solutions to the new environments that we face. So what I want to do now is really get into this idea of creativity. What really is creativity? Well, you perhaps might have come across someone saying to you, you need to think out of the box. I mean, I have come across this so many times. You need to think out of the box. But what does it really mean? What does thinking out of the box really mean? I mean, this is not what a box looked like, first of all. I think a box is essentially a set of assumptions that you develop in life. As you grow up, you develop some assumptions. You encounter different situations. Through those situations, you encounter some experiences. And those experiences lead to some assumptions, and those assumptions lead to some rules. And you live your life by those rules without challenging them. And so those rules become the parameters of your box. And thinking out of the box really involves challenging those assumptions, the rules that you develop over your lifetime. And it's about going back and breaking some of those assumptions and rules. So let me illustrate this by means of an example. If I ask you what is half of 18, what would the answer be? Well, the obvious answer would obviously be 9, because that is clearly the half of 18. But there are other alternative answers. It could be 1 or 8. So if you wrote down 18 in numbers, you could actually split it down the middle, and on the one side you'll have 1, and on the other side you'll have 8. You see, the thing is, I never really asked you for the numerical half of 18. All I wanted to know was the half of 18. But because at schools we've been taught to think in numerical terms, when someone asks you to half something, which is a number, you immediately think of it as a numerical half, because that's how we've been trained to think. But in fact, it doesn't have to be a numerical half, as I've shown in this example. The other possibilities are 8 or teen, or this in Roman numerals, or that, or even that. So, what are the key principles that are involved in creativity? Well, first of all, there are 3 principles. The first principle is around contagion. So when we engage in creativity, and particularly in team creativity, and if someone actually suggests an idea, make it contagious, build on it. Don't kind of hold back. If it triggers something in your head, build on it. The other principle is known as escapism. So, just allow yourself to be absorbed in a world that is not confined by the rules and the conventions that we're used to. Just allow yourself to suspend in a world that is not confined by the rules and the conventions that we're used to. And the third principle is something known as taking different perspectives, because how you see something will differ depending on where you look at it from. So if you look at a piece of paper and you look at it from the side, you look at it from the top, you look at it on an angle, you will see a different image of it. And it's essentially that, looking at something from different angles. But what I want to come back to is this sort of whole idea of escapism, which is why I've got this picture of Harry Potter. And there has actually been a real success story around this. There's a company that's actually come up with a magic wand which is modeled on Harry Potter. And this magic wand is called the Chimera wand, and it's actually an electronic device. So when you open the cap at the bottom of this wand, you can actually insert some batteries inside it. And it uses a motion-sensitive technology that you would find in something like a Wii console. And you can control any infrared device. You can turn it around to turn the volume up or the volume down, or you can kind of swivel it to turn the TV on or off. And it is something that was inspired, in fact, by Harry Potter, and the company had made a lot of money out of it. Some of the key principles around creativity involves understanding that there are two key phases. First, there's the creative phase. In the creative phase, it involves understanding that it's not about analyzing ideas. It's about letting ideas flow, making ideas expansive, letting ideas grow. It's about accepting that not everything in this world can be explained by reason, so irrationality is welcome. It's about constantly asking, what if? What if the world was different? What if we did things differently? And there should be no criticism during the creative phase. And it is only after one has done the creative phase that one goes into the analytical phase, where one begins to apply business logic to try and reduce down the number of options available to ones that really matter, to apply business logic to kind of assessing whether we're going to be able to afford it, whether it's technically feasible, constantly asking why. Why would it work? Why would our customers buy it? And at this stage, constructive criticism is allowed. So let me just go on to discuss a number of tools around creativity. And there are actually tools that you can use to solve problems in a creative way. So if we take this example, a tea bag. If we were to redesign a tea bag, how would we go about it? And this simple tool enables us to do this in a more effective and a creative way. And firstly, it involves understanding what are the rules around a tea bag. You know, what defines a tea bag? So if you think here, what are the rules around tea bag? What are the functional characteristics? What does it do? How does it function? Well, first of all, a tea bag is either rectangular or round. It has to have a porous bag, so when you put a tea bag into water, the tea infuses with the water, and it's basically thrown away after use. The next thing we do then is, and of course there will be lots and lots of other rules, so I'm just using this as an example. We then look at each rule and break the rules. We do the opposite of what the rules say. So in this example, if a tea bag is rectangular round, what if we did it differently? Well, it can be cylindrical, it can be triangular, it can be square. Or the second rule with a porous tea bag, well, rather than even having a tea bag, can we do away with a tea bag and have concentrated liquid tea that you could squirt into your cup? Or can you have tea capsules that will dissolve in your cup? Or can you have granulated tea that, will dissolve in your cup, etc.? Or, rather than have it, wasted after use, can you have multiple use tea bags where you can use it time and time again, multi-site? Can you actually use tea bag or fertilizer? And so by structuring your thinking that way, you can start to actually develop creative ideas more effectively. And if you know how to do this, how to break rules, you can even turn things on its head. So as this example shows, this is an example of a world's first night safari park in Singapore. If you think about a safari park and you imagine you were a staff member working in there and you had an idea about a night safari park. You went to your boss and said, what about a night safari park? It might sound like quite a crazy idea, but if you were able to suspend that for a moment and just think about it, then other opportunities emerge. So what they did was they actually created a landscape in the night safari park so that you can get up close to the animals at night. They created a moonlight environment so that you can see the animals, and of course you can also see nocturnal animals. Of course they added other attractions like nighttime eating, fire eating shows, and those kind of things, which then opened up a range of other opportunities and value. Now I'm going to pause here for a moment, and we've got two more other tools that I'll cover, and we'll sort of carry on with the presentation after this. But I do want to kind of come back to the poll question and see what the results of the poll are, but also take a couple of questions before we get to the end. So if you do have questions, just keep sending this through. We'll take a couple. We'll be able to take all of those, and we'll try and take a few more towards the end. So Joe, can we have the results of the poll question?
We certainly can, Noordin. So thank you very much, all our participants, for getting involved today. Which of the following statements is true about creativity? And Noordin, overwhelmingly, they're answering A. Everyone can improve their creative output. 97% students. And the third, creative people are artistic. That's the second most popular option, but only 3% our participants today. So there you go, Noordin. Everyone can improve their creative output. Is this the case?
That is indeed the case. I am actually really surprised by how well people actually guessed this or knew about this. And the point that I was really trying to emphasize in the last few minutes is that, you know, everyone has the creative potential, and not everyone has the tools and the techniques to be creative. And it is about acquiring those tools and techniques, like the rule-breaking tool that I've just discussed. And if you have those tools, then you can actually extract that creativity more effectively. And in terms of, you know, the artistic side of creativity, that is only one side. You know, not all artistic people are creative. Not all creative people are artistic. The creativity manifests itself in different forms and different varieties. So I'm really glad that 97% of the people actually got this question right. But I hope that this gives you a bit of a appreciation that creativity, we're all creative people, we're all creative in different ways. Some are artistic, some are good with, you know, numbers, and all sorts of other ways. But the important thing is to actually have access to the tools and the techniques to be able to bring out that creative potential that we have. And I wonder if there are any sort of questions that have flowed in at this stage.
Oh, there are lots of questions, Noordin, lots of questions. And I really enjoyed seeing some of these innovations and inventions. And you know, I'm currently studying and learning about value and co-creation of value. And it's really great to see, you know, some of the examples that you're showing of companies that have, you know, innovated and just created more values for their consumers. We also asked all the participants today, Noordin, to tell us a bit about themselves and their achievements. So I'm just going to share that with the room so you know who's in the room with you. We have Kamal. He's an architect, currently working as assistant facility manager in a large-scale university campus in Saudi Arabia. We have technical partners in charge of specialized audits and international engagements. We have nurses, Christopher Nurse, a technology consultant from the largest law firm in the Caribbean. My proudest achievement throughout my career was in 1998. I was very instrumental in the design and implementation of a global communication network. Thank you very much for that. We have Nora from Lebanon, working as a sales manager in valves manufacturing in Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much. We have Rama, working as a homeroom teacher for second grade. Senior program officers. We have a managing director and a CEO of a training company. We have a head of IT of an automobile company, and a proudest achievement was the delivery of a 8-year project involving many different companies of diverse structure and size. And teachers, we have all types of people, Noordin. They're flying in with their questions. They're all being very creative with their questions as well. So thank you very much.
I feel so fortunate to be among this crowd of obviously very, very well-qualified group of people.
Indeed. So we have our first question, a very interesting one, Noordin. Can creativity be groomed or mentored? Can we mentor creativity?
I think so. I think creativity can be groomed and mentored. As I have just kind of been trying to kind of emphasize, is that there are a range of tools that can be used in creativity, and by learning those tools, and they're not complex, they can be very simple, but by using those tools, you can actually become a more creative person. You may not become more creative in terms of your own potential, but in terms of the way in which you are able to extract that creativity in what you have, I think those tools can really help. So, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think creativity is something that can be groomed and that can be mentored. Yes.
Thank you. And you were talking about the right brain and left brain earlier, Noordin. I did one of those tests, me and my wife at home, and she was equal-brained on the left and the right, and I was very much right-brained, you know, a creative mind, as they say. And I do get teased a bit at home when I can't do something simple, and my wife will always say to me, "Well, that's your right brain." So thank you for that. It appears that creative innovation will possibly require collaboration or partnership of some sort. Is this correct in terms of creative innovation? Do we have to partner up and collaborate with others, or is that something we can do individually?
Well, that's a very, very good question. I mean, if you look at the history of innovation. You look at some of the sort of the old, the iconic innovations. They are often chance discoveries by one individual, and through individual perseverance and individual creativity. And those innovations still exist. But I think increasingly, in a much more complex world that we live in, where the boundaries of science and disciplines and industries are becoming more fuzzy, I think it is inevitable that we're going to see more networked and distributed creativity, where there are large groups of people involved, and we have to learn how to actually harness the creativity of such large crowds. And there are many tools and techniques and approaches and processes that are out there. I mean, one couldn't just replace individual creativity. That's a very important part of it. But I think increasingly it's going to be more a networked creative environment. And also, Joe, in terms of your own kind of perspective on right brain or left brain, I wouldn't stress too much about it. The question I had in the poll question really was to try and kind of highlight the point that that often we are led to believe that there's a creative brain, which is a right brain, and the more analytical brain. But in reality, it doesn't quite work like that. It's been proven scientifically that we need both the left and the right brain to actually be creative, because the two parts of the brain don't function in quite the isolation that it's seen to be. So there is something called the corpus callosum, which is a big nerve fiber that connects the left and the right brain.
Wow.
To be creative, you need the ability to think freely, but also the ability to make connections which come from your other part of the brain, and the brain isn't as quite defined in that way.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to give you another question, and then we'll continue the presentation and then field some of these more of these questions throughout. And we have a fabulous one that kind of combines, achievement as well as a question in there. As a finalist in last year's Businesswoman of the Year, well done. This year I'm tasked with mentoring a young aspiring businesswoman. My question is, how can I help her be as creative as possible? Wow.
Wow, that's well. First of all, congratulations on your award. It's a really, really tough question to answer, because there's a lot that one can do to support another person to be more creative. I suppose one thing that I would say is to kind of impress upon that person that as we grow up, we develop rules in life, we develop different ways of thinking, and to be prepared to challenge those and to be prepared to do things differently. Even, we learn a particular optimal route of getting to work from home. Sometimes taking a different route can be a good thing, because you start to see different things. And to kind of be prepared to challenge the assumptions that we're used to. Edward de Bono once said, schools stifle creativity and universities sterilizes it. I think we need to heed that warning, and we need to say, okay, this is how we've grown up, this is how we do maths, but this is really how it has to be. And I think providing that kind of space for that young individual to be prepared to experiment and to fail and to challenge ideas is probably one way of supporting that person.
Okay, thank you very much, Noordin. So we'll continue, Noordin, with your address on innovation, and then we'll come back to you later, because we want to encourage students to listen to more of what you're saying, and then be stimulated to ask even more questions at the end. And we still have a lot of questions still to go through. So thank you very much.
That's brilliant, and I noticed that we've well past the half-hour limit, so I'm going to move across quite quickly. The next tool that I want to cover very briefly it's a really simple tool, and it's called random ideation. And it simply involves taking a problem, in this example, the tea bag, and actually finding a word in a dictionary or in a book, a random word, the only thing around this is that it should be a noun rather than a verb, and relating it back to the tea bag. So, so I have now got in front of me a little book, and I just found a word which says train, like a choo-choo train. And how can you relate a train to a tea bag? There are many ways of doing this. It might take you a little while because I'm used to it. A train and a tea bag, well, maybe you have a tea bag that's actually shaped like a train, or maybe you have a tea bag that's got little sections so that you can tear off each section, like, different sections like you find in a train, or a kind of a tea bag that's used on a train, something that's designed for train journeys. And so random words like that can actually give you movement in ideas, and I encourage anyone to try that out. And the third tool that I want to share with you is brainstorming. And it again is a very simple tool, and it involves really sort of fundamentally looking at the pain points around a product. Because as they say, desperation is the mother of all inventions. So if you look at a tea bag, what are the things that really annoy you or that bug you around a tea bag? Well, things that annoy me are things like the tea bag drips when you take it out of the cup. So what are the potential solutions around it? Well, now I've found the pain point. What are the potential solutions? Well, maybe you could have an instant dry tea bag so that it doesn't drip. Or sometimes the tea bag gets overly brewed. So maybe you can design a tea bag so that it only kind of infuses to a certain point, it stops infusing. Or a tea bag that breaks. Maybe you design a tea bag in a slightly different way. So, these are some simple tools, but very effective tools you can use. And it is only after you have kind of come up with those creative ideas and you go into the second phase. Remember when I showed you the two distinct phases? Then you go into the second phase, which is the analytical phase. This is where you get serious. You take those sort of ideas, some which may be totally silly. You say, well, which ones work? Which ones don't work? And which ones can we actually alter? So here's some funny pictures of ideas, obviously, that hadn't quite worked, and that obviously needed improvement. I particularly like this one, and that, and this apparently stopped this girl from getting the soup splatter all over her face. Anyway, I hope you get an idea. The idea of creativity is to come up with lots of ideas where the quantity matters, not the quality, but once you've actually got the quantity, then you focus on the quality through the analytical phase. But of course, that is not the end of it, because you might think you have a great idea, but ultimately it depends on whether the customer is prepared to pay for it. The customer value. Does your idea have customer value? And there are a number of ways in which you look at how a customer put a value on things. One way is to see in terms of the perception, because the perception that a customer has on a product or service will determine the value that the customer attaches to it. So let's take an example. If you think of a bottle of Evian water, in Australia it costs probably about $3.50. Why do people buy Evian bottled water when you can get pretty much a similar water out the tap for less than a cent? Evian has even come up with things like Evian Body Mist Spray and Evian Limited Edition water bottle. And they cost about 30 to 50 Australian dollars, or probably about 25 pounds. And it is all water. Sometimes the value of things can be time dependent. Sometimes things can be valuable at one point, but they become less valuable at another point. So to give you this example, if you think of in Australia, we've got some major newspapers like the Australian or the Age. Each cost about $2 or $3. And if I actually had a newspaper from today and said, would you like to buy this newspaper? And if you're someone who reads that particular newspaper, you probably pay me the going price, whether it's $2 or $3. But if I said to you, I've got the newspaper from last week, then the chances are that I'll have to pay you to get rid of my rubbish. But if I said to you, I have the newspaper from tomorrow, but today, then what would you pay me for it? Probably everything you've got, because you'll know the lottery numbers in there in advance of anyone else. You probably know the stock price, the gold price, etc. So the timing of things are really important. Sometimes the value of things can have a certain kind of an emotive appeal to it. So, Angry Birds, which is a little bit of an old example now, it's such a simple app. Basically you take, you pull a head of a bird, let it go, and it crashes into these pigs and blow it up. It also has sort of emotive appeal. People love destroying things. Human beings have this sort of thing about, sort of primitive thing about wanting to destroy things. And it's about playing on those sort of instinctive human emotive side of things. And to kind of emphasize the point, this is a bottled water container that came out in Japan called the Eco Crush bottle, which is owned by Coca-Cola. And this particular bottle allows you to squash it. Once you've actually drunk it, it's flexible in such a way that you can squash it and squish it before you drop it into the bin. People love that. People wanted to actually destroy things. And that bottled water became a phenomenon. It's a bit like, when you play with bubble wrap, you want to destroy every little bubble that you could find. It's sometimes about creating a cult following. Think of a duct tape, simple, humble duct tape. They actually have a cult following. They have duct tape fashion contests, a ductivity club where people can post new ways and uses of duct tape. And they've even gone one step further. 3M has gone one step further to say duct tape making the world a prettier place. So, I think creating a cult following is the point I want to make here. So just in conclusion, some things for perhaps all of us to reflect. Innovation is actually a combination of two ingredients. First of all, it's a form of art. It's something that you can't really specify. If one has to go back and specify to Leonardo da Vinci about Mona Lisa and ask him to draw it, would he be able to do it? If someone who hasn't seen Mona Lisa and you actually put a requirement specification together, would they be able to do it? Clearly not. So there's an artistic side to it. But innovation is also science. There are innovation processes, there are innovation tools that I've just discussed. There are innovation systems. And so innovation is about bringing the artistic and the process side together. And sometimes it's about out-of-this-world thinking. So this is an example that Malcolm Gladwell used in his book. And essentially, it involves, being able to think out of your normal context. So in his book, he discusses the idea that if you had an A4 sheet of paper, and if you folded it, and folded it again, and folded it again, and if you folded it 50 times, he asked, how thick or how high do you think that A4 sheet of paper might be? Some say, it'd be the height of a phone book, or maybe the height of a fridge. But the reality is, and this is mathematics, the height of an A4 sheet that's folded 50 times is equivalent to the distance from the Earth to the Moon. And if you folded it another time, 51 times, then it will be the equivalent of a distance from Earth to the Moon and back. And so innovation requires you to think in a very different way, sometimes things that might not look too logical. And lastly, it requires an ability to see things differently. It requires an ability to understand that how you see yourself and how others see you are two very different things, as this picture illustrates. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll pause there and see if we've got any comments or questions at this stage.
Oh, Noordin, we have a lot of questions.
Really?
You've really been stimulating the audience to fire in some great stuff. My second graders and I reuse tea bags by adding them to our compost container, a super way to enrich soil. So there's a creative way that we've got the tea bags in as well. My mind did block when I was trying to think of all of the ways that we could repurpose a tea bag. So thank you very much for that. What hinders creativity? That's a question that we have for our audience. Is there anything that hinders creativity?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. I think structure can hinder creativity. So for example, if I said, can you actually identify all the types of fruits in this world? And so you put a team of people together and you say, I want you to kind of list down all the types of fruits together. And as people are listing these types of fruits together, someone would say, no, we need to have some categories here. We need to have tropical fruits, and we need to have fruits that only grow in the winter, and so on and so on. And you start creating those categories, and then you find one example, which is like, it could be the winter fruit, or it could be a summer fruit, it could be and you start arguing about it. And so you lose that kind of purpose of creativity. So things like structure, things like order are really kind of things that really hinder creativity. And when you do creativity, you've got to allow ideas to flow and have less structure and less rules.
Thank you very much. Sometimes challenging the norms is seen as being having too much confidence. How can we avoid this? Very, very interesting.
I'm not sure if I understood the question, actually, Joe.
Yes, so sometimes challenging the norms in terms of innovating and doing something different can be seen as, maybe hubris or, arrogance or someone, maybe doing something under their own agenda. And how can you present an idea, let's say, to your company in an innovative way and try to get it through? How do you get the buy-in for an idea that is outside the box? I think that's what they're driving at with that question.
Oh, look, let me give you an example here, and I love this example. So when they were building the Disney World in Florida, the guy who was responsible for it, so they were building the second phase of it, and the guy who was responsible for it thought it would be wonderful to have basically a part of the Disney World with live animals. And so he went to the board and he said, could we have a zoo in Disney World? And the board said, oh, come on, kids come to see Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. They don't want to see like man-eating animals like tigers and so on. So he went back, and the next board meeting he came back again. He brought a live tiger into the room. And of course, all the board members jumped up onto the table, and he said, "Well, did it excite you? Did it kind of make you do something differently?" And everyone said, "Yes, it did." Well, I think children will be excited about this. So he got what he wanted.
Exactly.
So it's about turning something into a reality. So if you're going to sell an idea that's kind of abstract, create a prototype. If you're going to kind of try and talk about, how you're going to, help customers, bring real customers into the boardroom understanding those ideas.
Thank you very much. So just going to pose a last question, maybe, in terms of putting an idea forward to your company. We've all been in that situation where we've discussed an idea, Noordin, be it with a colleague, and then later on, months down the line, we've put something forward, maybe officially or unofficially, and we thought it was abandoned. And then later on, we hear this great idea being pitched, and then we realize, well, it's our idea. How do we combat that, and how do we maybe head that up front and get our ideas through, but make sure that we do get the recognition that is important within a work environment, career development, that we do get recognized for our creativity?
I think that there are two parts to this. Often when you have an ideas campaign, or ideas campaign is where a company says, okay, we want ideas on this particular problem, could you give us ideas around this? Or it might just be more of an informal thing. Don't be surprised if other people have come up with similar ideas. It's quite common. And it's quite common to then for you to get upset over it, thinking, well, they've copied my ideas, but they haven't acknowledged me. So that's kind of one possibility.
Mm-hmm.
The other possibility is the company has somehow inadvertently or intentionally ignored your idea and made it their own. In that case, it's more about the credibility of the company and the rules and processes that they have. And a good organization will always acknowledge and reward the people that contribute the most. And also remember that an idea is only an idea until something happens with it. So I wouldn't get too sensitive about the idea. It's really about, okay, you put in an idea so that you're adding value, but it's a value chain. So there are people who are going to actually turn an idea into something else, so they're adding value to it. So there will be people who are sponsoring those ideas, finding resources, money, and so on, to actually enable those ideas to really take off. So I think try and see this as a more of a partnership, collaborative thing. And obviously, you've got to protect your interest. If you have an idea, really deep, meaningful idea that has got deep intellectual property, then you want to go through a certain process where your ideas are being presented in a confidential manner before it gets exposed, and good companies will have processes for doing that.
Well, thank you very, very much, Noordin, and also to all our participants today for firing so many questions. Thank you, a participant here saying this is a unique way to generate connections. I joined in halfway, but I've really enjoyed this presentation, so thank you, Noordin, for that. And someone else asking, can we share the recorded version, which we will do as well. So thank you very, very much. In terms of a bit of housekeeping, we want to make sure that our students are aware of what we have on offer here at the University of Roehampton Online. So 1 in 6 of our students are actually referred to the program. So Noordin, within this room today, of over 100 people, we'll have quite a few friends that are actually studying together. So if that's something that interests you, please speak to your enrollment consultant. It's a very nice way to get some money off your tuition fees as well. Quite an innovative way to do it, as I would say. We also have our next webinar that's up and coming. There's always something that we're offering around the corner. Today we had a great session on innovation, the keynote from a subject matter expert in the field. And next week we actually get to meet one of our students, Fiona Roffey, who's an HRM and HR manager based in the Caribbean, and she's going to discuss her experience on the program with us. So please come and listen to that. It'll be a very different webinar focused on online learning, and we certainly like to think that we have a very innovative product here as well. So Noordin, thank you so much. I really feel that we could have gone on and done a day's workshop and seminar in terms of the questions that we've had here. I think we've really pumped up and energized the crowd to go off and do something creative. This webinar is about making those connections and unleashing your creativity. So we really encourage you to go and do that. Noordin, I'll come back to you and ask you just for one last tip. If you feel that you've got a lot of creative energy and you want to express it at work, what's the first the first thing that you can do? What's the starting point?
I think the starting point is to find someone who is going to listen to you and who is going to actually not apply too much judgment, because there is a tendency in organizations to actually challenge ideas straight away. And I think tolerance to ambiguity is really important, and this is for all of us. If you see a new idea, a new shoot of an idea, you have to be prepared to tolerate the ambiguity associated with it. So find someone who is going to be tolerant to the ambiguity associated with that idea. Don't go to someone who is going to say, how much is it going to cost? Is it going to be technically feasible? Is it going to, would customers buy it? So I think the first thing I would do is find someone, a buddy, that's going to actually listen to the idea and help grow it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Go out and find your buddy, and we will see you in class. Thank you very much, Dr. Noordin, and thank you very much for participating in today's webinar for the University of Roehampton Online.
Thank you all for listening in. Bye-bye.